Ukiah Valley Sanitation District regular meeting is now in session on Wednesday, July 10th at 6 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Chelsea, would you like to take roll, please?
Chair McNairland.
Present.
Vice Chair Witt.
Here.
Director Reed. Here. Director Baca. Here. Director Marshall.
Here.
Okay, item number 2 is public expression of non-agendized items. We do have a podium in the front, so if anyone from the public wishes to come and speak for 3 minutes on an item that is not on the agenda, please come up to the podium. Seeing none, we'll move on. Item number 3 is discussion and possible action regarding review of financial statements from CLA. So we have Jeff, what's your last name, Jeff? We have Jeff Peak here from CLA to go over our financial statements with us. We have photocopied the last 3 months of these statements, and they are available on the back table for the gallery as well. So, Jeff, I'll take it away.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through the May 31st financial statements since that's the most up-to-date at this point. And I'll just kind of go through each page, that way you get an idea of what's being shown. But generally speaking, this is trying to show you the statement of net position as of the end of that month that would, as best we can, look from an accrual standpoint, the way that the financial statement should on that date. There is some information from the city that, of course, they only give to us, on a quarterly basis, and then they do these true ups. So that information is stuff that I'm not able to incorporate into this because I can't predict what those numbers will be. So the first page on page 1 is the statement of net position. And that just gives you an idea of the assets and liabilities of the district. So currently, there's about $8.6 million in cash. There is an accounts receivable, and then there's the amounts that are due from the city of Ukiah based upon the settlement.
What's the accounts receivable, Jeff?
So I believe the accounts receivable are amounts that the city has in the district funds that they hold at the city that is receivable from district customers that they've put over there.
So charges
So
for
it's
services.
charges for services that have not been received yet.
So there's, I'm just trying to understand this, so there's $687,000 of customers that are in arrears? Is that?
Possibly, but probably not. My guess is it's just money that the city has not moved over to district funds at that point, but they recorded the revenues into the district funds. That's my understanding of that, because they don't always move money between the two automatically.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Yeah.
how are you reconciling the number you get from the city to the actual accounts and how much each customer is paying?
So that's so in terms of the revenue reconciliation, that's something that's been a bit of a challenge for us because the city has been unable to provide us with a listing of all of the district customers and what the charges were to those customers that ties out to the revenues that they are recording into the district funds within the city. So that's just something that at this point, what we're recording here is what they're telling us the revenue is. We don't have an actual reconciliation for it because I have not been able to get something from the city for it.
But isn't accounts receivable kind of a misnomer in that would be money, like I would think you would label it district money held for unknown reasons or some other label than an accounts receivable, which seems to be money owed from someone else to you.
So these are prepared financial statements, so we're not offering any assurance that these financial statements are correct. So really what I'm doing is I'm taking the information that's provided to me from the city and from the district and from the county, and then I bring all of those numbers together and present them in a financial statement format. Whether the information that I'm provided is right or wrong, I don't know, because I am not doing any sort of assurance procedures on that. So if they tell me it's accounts receivable, I report it as accounts receivable. So that's the best I can tell you at this point, is I'm reporting it the way that they're telling me.
So that would probably be a question for our auditor then, would you guess? I mean,
Or
The auditor won't know at this point
Question
because
for
they
Dan
have not
Lovell.
done any procedures on the current year, these numbers. They've only been doing procedures through 2018
oh,
at this
gotcha.
point.
Okay.
So if we wanted to look deeper into those numbers with the city, we'd have to ask them for additional supporting documentation in regards to what that actually means and what it ties out to. The rest of the information on here, of course, you have the capital assets, which are generally the trunk lines, sewer lines, those types of things, and then the depreciated value for those. And then liabilities, which are the accounts payable. The reason why it has $2.8 million to the city of Ukiah at this point is because the city has also not actually gone into the district funds and transferred cash for the amounts that they would believe are allocable from the city's 840 sewer fund at this point. So I've just been taking the information they provided to me for that 840 fund that I know is where they do the allocations from, allocated it based upon the 47%, and then gone ahead and recorded those expenses into the district's financial statements to paint a better picture of what's going on a monthly basis. But at this point in time, the city's not transferred that $2.8 million worth of cash, which I believe would happen at some point because of the allocation that they would do. The rest of this accrued interest, that just has to do with the bonds. And then the debt payable is really just related to the component of debt for the capacity project, where the district actually owns a portion of the additional capacity that was generated as a result of that capacity project. This debt number does not contain the remaining portion of the debt, which is also allocated out to the district for the rehab and rehabilitation project component of that project. So this is just for the component that the district effectively owns, which is that capacity. So that leads us down to the net position, and you can see that the net position for the district currently, the unrestricted net position is $10 million. The net invested in capital assets is really just the net between the capital assets themselves and the associated liabilities or the debt that's associated with that. They could shoot at the $3.2 million that's related to net investment in capital assets, and then the rest is just your available funds to spend on operations and that sort of thing. Does anybody have any questions on that statement in that position page?
What's the $1 million here in the assets?
Okay, so there's two components, because the city still owes the district $4 million from the settlement, and the way that it's split up, because there's current and non-current assets here, the $1 million is due within the next year, and so we put that into a current section, whereas the $3 million is long-term because it's more than a year out from being received, and so that's why there's the separation there, but it's really just the total $4 million that's still owed from the city for the settlement.
So we're fluid, 10 million. I mean, this is not a district that's in the red at this point, or that would be struggling, that would need to increase rates or anything like that. What I'm looking at is our unrestricted funds at this point, which could be adjusted at the end of the year as adjustments are made, based on the operations and maintenance of the plant and everything, but 10,396,000 is healthy. Is that considered healthy?
Well, it depends on the organization. I mean, in relation to what your change in net position is probably a better indication of the health, and you can kind of see that on the next page of the financial statements.
Okay.
because obviously if you had 10 million, but you were gonna spend 20 million next year and you didn't have the funds, that wouldn't be healthy.
Right.
But you can kind of, you can get a better idea of what's going on, with the district finances through the change in the statement of revenues, expenses, and change in that position page. So on here, and again, these are not audited numbers. This is just basically what the city is telling me, what I'm getting from the county and the district itself. But so for the month of May, charges for service revenue was about $499,000. For the year, so that would have been from July 1st of 2018 through May 31st of 2019, the total is $4.8 million. So that's what's been recorded at this point into the district funds as charges for service, so the fees for services. Connection fees, there were none that were recorded in the month of May, but there have been a total of $186,000 that's been recorded for the year so far. Then you can kind of see the breakdown here of what,
One real question. For the year being the fiscal year or the calendar year?
the fiscal year. So whenever I say the year, I'm talking about from July 1st
Till June 30th.
That's right, through June 30th, but in this case, it's through May 31st, because we've only gotten that far
Right.
at this point.
We're not there yet.
Right, so it's July 1st of 2018 through May 31st of 2019, that's the fiscal year that we're, to date, that we're talking about. In the operating expense section, it's broken down into a few categories here, and we can kind of talk about those a little bit more, but the main things are salaries and benefits and then services and supplies. Those are district specific, so that's everything that's being captured from the information that's provided from the county and the information that's provided from the district financial records through QuickBooks. Then that third line is operating expense allocation from the city of Ukiah. So that's everything that's coming down from the city of Ukiah for all of operations. So that's where that hits. And so for the month of May, that was $156,000, and then it's been 3.8 for the year. Again, they have not done the allocation that they typically do from all their other departments. They do these allocations in. I believe that I've captured through March, but they'll do another allocation in June, and then depending on how the audit goes, they could make additional adjustments and things to those numbers. But this 3.8 million, if you look on the next page, I include an actual operating expense allocation from the city of Ukiah that ties out to that 3.8 million in the district share of costs line item that's on the right-hand side. And then this also shows the total joint costs for that. Basically, I've derived all of this from the Fund 840 that the city provides me information for. So these numbers here are the exact numbers that are coming from that 840 fund. But then I also incorporate in the debt service components of that too, of which part of the reason why that payable is so high is because I don't think that the city has actually charged the district directly yet for some of the debt service that they actually owed. So I knew what those numbers were because I have all of the information, and so I just incorporated that into this. So this is a combination of the city's 840 fund and the total joint costs, and then the additional information that I know of that's a fact for debt service, principal, and interest. That way we can come out with a good idea of what that allocation would be based upon the 47%, which is the current percentage of the ESSUs that's being used at this time to allocate the district share of cost. So that's how you get to the 3.8 million, and then you can see the different categories of cost that are being allocated. I have combined certain things based upon what I saw coming from the city. But generally speaking, these are the categories coming directly across from what they're providing to me. Any questions on that?
Do you
Do you have a copy of the city's budget when you do this, so you know what their budgeted amount is?
I do not.
Okay.
Yeah,
Would that be helpful?
not for what I'm doing specifically, because the budget does not drive the allocation. So that doesn't really provide me with any additional information. You know, for your purposes, it might, but then that information would probably be better provided from the city so that they can line up the costs that are in their 840 fund with their budget. That way you can have a better idea of where they're at in their budget process, you know, budget versus actual. But that would be additional information I think we'd have to request from the city.
So 3.8 is 47% of the entire cost of the operation.
That's correct. At this point,
Through May.
through May. And then there's the additional allocation. So, I mean, it's likely, I mean, it's higher than this for sure. I just don't know what they are. I can't really estimate that at this point because of the way that the allocations happen from the city. But yes, that would be 3.8 is 47% of the total operating costs up to this point that we're aware of.
So this isn't a comment to you, but just an overall comment, because billing and collection is something that we did discuss at our last meeting. And right now, our actual costs are $111,577, and that's not including June.
Which is
Or any
considerably more than the
reconciliation.
80,000 we were led to believe last month.
Unless this fiscal year was much higher than next fiscal year, I don't know, but, so it's good to have these financial statements, because what we get from the city in our packets is really hard to understand, so. But anyway,
So then back on page 2, then it just goes through the legal, and then also the depreciation and amortization, which of course is not cash, but it, you know, it's the reflection of the usage of those assets over time. And so at this point, I'm showing an operating loss of $530,000 for the fiscal year to date. And then you have these additional revenues and expenses, and it takes it to, and these are the non-operating components, to a total change of net position of a loss of $851,000. So kind of taking that into consideration in terms of how that's impacting the net position, you know, at this time, you know, if you continued to operate that like that, and you know, if we just allocated, you know, if we felt like it was going to be the same in June, you know, you're looking at probably close to, I don't know, $1 million in total loss of net position over a year, but that means it would take approximately 10 years to completely deplete your reserve. So that's where you can kind of get a better idea of where you're going. That all being said, the two biggest factors here that are really contributing to the loss are really the legal expenses. I mean, if you bring those back to probably what would be a normal operating legal expense, you're likely not going to be running in a deficit at all. You're probably going to be having a positive change in that position based upon the current activity. That's what I would see happening going back to a normal legal operating cost. Okay. So,
Do you think this number, we'll call it 4 mil, just to make it easy, is that going to change much year to year, do you think? If we were to budgeting 4 million per year?
well, yes,
well,
the city budget increases every year. The salaries increase every year, that everything, if you look at the budget, it's constantly going up. So let's look month to month and see if, you know, it goes up.
My question basically is 4 million, should we anticipate it continuing to increase and so on? Like you just said yes.
I think so.
Yeah, it's good. Chemicals, the treatment process is gonna cost more, wages are gonna go up. Utilities are going up.
right. I mean, yeah, so I would
Was
say in
it-
general, you're always.
Was
gonna
this year any
have
higher than
3%.
other, would you know?
Off the top of my head, well, see, the kicker is that we haven't gone to the end of the year yet and haven't allocated the additional costs, so I don't know where we're really going to land.
Okay.
I don't have a copy of where we were at June 30, 2018 in front of me, so I can't really speak to that number, but if, you know, if we could pull that up really quickly and take a look at that number and see where this was in the prior year. But I would say that it's probably it's going to end up being a relatively similar number on an annual basis,
Okay.
but likely would increase. I would say that some of the numbers that occurred in the financial statements from 14 through 18 would be, it's not necessarily consistent, but I think that that was maybe a result of, you know, some of the things that were being talked about as part of the, you know, the lawsuit that was going on that was then subsequently settled on. And then, so now I think that you're going to see much more consistency
Regularity.
moving
Good.
forward happening here in sort of what you're seeing on a regular basis. And, you know, in this year, hopefully will be the last meeting, you know, the fiscal year 19, hopefully will be the last one where you're seeing, you know, a lot of these other things that are sort of out of the normal operations, and maybe you can start to move towards something that's more normal operations going into the 2020 year and beyond, and kind of see better pattern going into the future. That's what I would expect based upon, you know, the information sharing that I believe will happen now. So. So these are the summarized financial statements that we're preparing on a monthly basis. I'll actually be over the next week preparing the June financial statements as well. So we'll be caught up for the year, and then as soon as the city is able to provide us with final numbers, and we also need to get the final audited financial statements from 2018 from the city as well, so that then we can finalize our numbers for 18 and then roll that all forward so that we can have final numbers for 2019. Once that all occurs, then we can turn around and have the audit also, and then we'll just be right on track. So we're all geared up to be perfectly on track in terms of financial reporting. And then also in accordance with the operating agreement, we're prepared to, and we'll start providing all of the information that's necessary to provide back to the city, which will include all of the expenses that the district has incurred, and then also the general ledger detail that supports what those expenses were, and that will satisfy the district's compliance with the operating agreement. So we should all be good to go here real soon.
So when you say the city's 2018 audit, this fiscal year 17-18 audit, we don't have yet?
The numbers have not been finalized, and so, and there have been adjustments to some of those numbers that impact the district all the way up to at least the April time period, and I guess there's still potential that additional adjustments might happen. So we can't issue the district's audited financial statements for 2018 until we know for sure that the city's numbers have stopped moving.
So
Now,
adjustments to something a year ago? June 2018?
Today, adjustments today for things that happened a year ago, why would they not be adjusted a year ago?
I'm not going to speculate on what's going
I
on.
mean, is that standard government accounting? You deal with this frequently when we're laymen here, I guess,
Yeah,
to a degree.
That's my question too.
Things happen during audit process that causes the need for adjustments to occur. But I cannot speculate on why that has happened, other than it's happened. I just know that there have been adjustments that have occurred to the financial statements, including up to April, that were to the prior year financial statements.
Maybe I'm being simple, but if I have a reconciliation of my expenses and I'm moving it from column A to column F, it doesn't change the total. It changes what pigeonhole I've stuck that in. And how does that change? I guess, is more being stuck in the district's pigeonhole that didn't get stuck in there in the beginning? Is that, and why wouldn't it be stuck in there in the beginning and stuck in later? Is that a clear representation of what's going on?
Well, you know, the only thing that I know is that when they did the audit and they have to look at the accrual entries that were recorded and how that impacts the city, and when those adjustments were recorded in, it affected Fund 840, and as a result there was an additional cost. But in some cases it's actually gone the other direction as well. So in some cases, it was actually a reduction in cost in certain areas. So it was not just more and more and more and more. There were some adjustments that caused more expense in the 840 fund, but then there were adjustments that caused less expense in the 840 fund, and so it kind of offset a bit here and there as they were trying to get their accrual accounting correct and get the entries recorded into their proper place. So it was really just sort of that true up to the accruals that needed to occur that caused those entries. But other than me saying that was just part of the audit process, that it was discovered that the entries needed to be recorded to get the financial statements properly stated for the city, I don't know why. I just know that it happened.
A lot of, it also depends on the amounts. I mean, if huge amounts, that would be a problem.
So,
I think,
I think
if you're keeping books.
I know.
If you're
I'm just
keeping books,
saying,
you should.
I can see how coming up
I
later.
think what I recall being something that happened was at the end of the year, maybe after the fiscal year, there was a $750,000 adjustment that we caught, right, and we questioned, but in this report, you're already taking that into an account, so that wouldn't be a surprise at the end of the year.
So yeah, this report that you're seeing here does incorporate any of the prior period adjustments that occurred. You wouldn't see them other than the fact that it would have either increased or decreased net position, but you would never see it in the statement of revenues and expenses and changes in net position in this statement because it happened in the prior year. So all of those things were just incorporated into these numbers, and then we will subsequently, once they've told us that they're finalized, we will make the proper adjustments to the 2018 financial statements for the district, which will then line up the beginning net position to what the numbers are that are in these statements. And then that statement will incorporate those revenues and or expenses that were changed after they had given us the original numbers. So that will all end up in the 2018 statements. And so the auditor will not be able to issue the district's audited financial statements until the city has finalized their statements so that we can be sure that the numbers aren't going to change anymore.
So we can't finish our 17-18 audit until we get the city's 17-18 audit results. Right, that's what you just said. And then I guess, and it was the indirect cost allocation that is my main concern. You know, that at the end of the year, that goes up dramatically with one big lump sum that we're not expecting.
Well, and on the indirect cost allocation, I think that it was a bit of a surprise that the numbers changed for 2018, but in terms of what I saw from an indirect cost allocation, it was relatively in line with what it had been in the past. It's just that they missed booking the entry and recording the cost in and charging that to the district until months and months and months. I mean, you know, I don't know, it happened after we had issued our compilation reports. We were not aware of that at all, and then all of a sudden, this huge adjustment, and so we had to say, hey, wait a second, hold up, you know, where's this additional cost coming from? And then the city provided the additional supporting documentation for how they ended up calculating that. And so yes, it was a surprise because we weren't really expecting it because they didn't provide it to us initially, but upon investigation, it really wasn't outside of what was sort of normally charged in terms of that indirect cost allocation, at least as far as what I had seen.
Now you have your eye on it though, right?
But now, you know, so now going forward, yes, we're able to kind of see how that's flowing in. And like I said, the city had given me what I believe was the indirect cost allocation through March of 2019. They have not done their indirect cost allocation for April, May, and June yet, which is to be expected because they kind of told us that they would only do it quarterly. So I would expect that in the next, hopefully, month or so, they would give us the numbers for the indirect cost allocation.
But that's just they use a method to calculate that, so that shouldn't be a moving number, right? I mean, if we have the last 3 quarters, we should be able to predict what the last quarter would be.
You could probably estimate what it's likely to be, however, it's an allocation of actual cost. So the percentage might be the same, but if the actual cost goes up or down, it could be larger or smaller depending on that,
Maybe
on
they-
those actual numbers.
Incurred all their expenses in the last quarter for something, then it would
It could
jump
be a
into-
lot larger, absolutely, it could be, and I don't know how to predict that.
Okay,
I mean, we could take what it was for the first 3 months of the year, for that first quarter, and say, well, if we estimate it at being the same as the first 3 months of the year, it's gonna be this much, but,
yeah, I think maybe just the district, we need to look at it from year to year, you know, and compare numbers that way. See the movement in it. Because I mean, right, if they incurred all their expenses in a certain quarter and none in this quarter, then it would, but I think
Yeah, I get it,
most
yeah.
of that is salary, so I expect, isn't it? Salaries and benefits?
I would expect that probably a lot of it is because that's where the indirect cost for the city would come from.
I'm wondering if it has to do with projects that we can complete.
No, projects would be under,
Those are direct costs.
yeah,
Repairs and
those are direct.
maintenance or-
Indirect is just paying for their staff and,
The various departments.
But it should be
and the
salaries
counties
and
for
benefits
How
should
they
be-
split it all up.
You know, there's a salaries and benefit category, the other salaries and benefits should be in there, that shouldn't be in the indirect
no,
costs.
salaries, these salaries and benefits are the direct salary and benefits.
That's correct.
The indirect cost would be your salary and benefit of your city manager and what percentage we're
That's
paying of
right.
him.
That's right.
Or your city council, what percentage we're paying of their
Or the
stipend.
city.
But why isn't
City
that,
attorney we're paying for.
why is that not placed in a salaries and benefit when you know what the city manager is making? You know what your percentage is going to be. Why would it be allocated as an indirect cost? It's a fixed cost that we're going to pay regardless, so that doesn't make any sense to me, but,
That's how the city charges us for that cost as an indirect.
but it shouldn't, maybe we ought to encourage them to do it in a different manner.
Well,
because
Ernie, if
it's
you
not-
think you can encourage the city to change their method of doing that, you go for it.
Well, it makes no sense. Sage, Sean, they all have a set salary, and a certain percentage of that salary is allocated to the district annually, which we've seen in the budget. Why wouldn't it just be allocated right off into wages and benefits? It mystifies me, that, you know.
Well, here's another, I'll throw it out there. Indirect costs could include some of their IT. So maybe
Well-
they buy a bunch of computers
Well,
for
now
the
I can
sewer
understand-
system, and so one quarter that number goes up, and the other quarters that number is zero,
Now, that
right?
part I understand, because that's not a known expense that they're signed up for annually. The management is a known expense. If you go to accounting 101, your fixed costs are your salary and the cost of your facility and your utilities, and your variable costs change by your productivity. Okay, so you would think that it would be some correlation there.
Can you explain the difference between a direct and indirect cost so that everybody can understand what's?
Sure. So the direct costs are literally directly related to the sewer system. So it would be the employees who work at the plant and the employees who are involved with repairs and maintenance and those types of things. That's where the direct cost is coming from. So repairs and maintenance on the plant is going to be direct cost to that. But then the city has different departments that don't necessarily, and this is in every government, so the city's not unique, but they have departments that do not have direct revenue streams. And they have to be paid for through the services that the city provides, along with taxes they collect and so on and so forth. And so they have these service centers that need to be allocated out to the rest of the city so that they can recoup the cost for those particular things. And this is all perfectly standard in terms of the way that it should be done. And so the city manager's salary goes into a particular department and charges through a particular fund at the city, and then there's an allocation that happens to distribute that cost across the other city funds and departments. And so that's why it's not done on an individual expense by expense basis, because that would be really cumbersome and difficult to accomplish. You can get the information because you know where all of those costs are coming from, but it's far easier to take all of those costs that you know you're going to allocate based upon the allocations that you come up with. It's easier just to take them all and then multiply it by that percentage and then just do a lump allocation between those to offset the cost and bring the cost over into the departments and the funds where they need to, where they've determined that they have to allocate those costs out to, which is why it just comes across as an indirect allocation of these other costs. If you need to see the supporting documentation for how they come up with that, there are actual documents.
I've studied the whole budget.
So there are actual documents that
Numerous
show
times.
all of the costs that are going in and how that's being allocated. But from an accounting perspective, it's far easier to do this one transaction. And from a reporting perspective, this is sufficient information from a reporting perspective to show that as the indirect allocation of city costs over to the district. Because that's quite literally what it is. It's just that indirect allocation.
Who gets to determine if it's direct? No, who gets to determine how indirect it is, how it's related to the sanitation district?
The city's making those determinations.
Yeah, the city decides that. what those allocations are.
What was the significant increase in the indirect cost on that end of the year? I know there was one item that they were all just, it was justifiable, but it was a significant increase. I can't.
I don't remember off the top of my head. I think we had talked about that briefly at that the meeting that I came to earlier this year, but I can't recall what it was. So.
Does the board have any questions? This is the opportunity for the gallery to have any public comment on this topic? No? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And so just to wrap it up and clarify, we will be getting our reports that are required by the contract to the city within the next couple of weeks. Correct? Working on those.
Correct.
Okay. Next item, oh, and I did have a comment, because I wanted to, maybe direction for staff, because these are just numbers that are reported, you know. So this isn't a question for Jeff, but this is a question for our district manager, Dave. Can you, I feel like our connection fees at basically $187,000 for the fiscal year might be low. I don't know when fees are paid for certain projects, but I know there have been a number of projects and one really big project with like 90 units. Maybe that hit the previous fiscal year. I'm not sure. But I know that we have an ESSU spreadsheet now that lists when all the connection adjustments are made. And I believe it's Sean over at the city that has that. And if you could connect with him and just verify that revenue of connection fees for me.
Sure. In fact, I have an appointment to meet with Sean on the 16th
Okay,
to discuss the ESSUs.
okay.
And
Could you put that on your task list for us, please?
Capital improvement fees? As
Yes.
well, you know, showing 180, if the 90 units at 0.6 of an ESSU, it should have been a whole lot more than $186,000. Or if the apartment project on Lake Mendocino, the gas station on Lake Mendocino, you know, there's quite a few projects that have gone on that had significant fees, I would think, that were in the district.
Yeah,
Sure.
and then some small ones too, like the Chinese place going across from Walmart,
Yeah.
you know. What's that called again? Panda Express, right. All right, thank you. Maybe if we can make a note, Chelsea, to follow up with that item on our next, under reports, or just follow up with that on our next meeting. Okay, thank you.
I'd also be very curious to see what how many hookups, whether it's in the city or district.
Yeah, Dave, while you're there, you can get a copy of that report and report out to us at the next meeting. Okay,
The way they did it previously, they did show the district and the city.
yeah,
I've received that report.
Yeah.
It would be an indicator of expansion, development,
yeah.
what's going on.
well, let me just say, so I think we're coming up to my report, right?
We're at approval of board meeting minutes, number
Okay, so I'll
4
just
right
make
now.
that- well, because a lot of stuff you're talking about is on my report.
Okay. All right, item number 4, approval of board meeting minutes. Does anyone need to make any changes to the minutes?
I wasn't at the special board meeting, so the public expression from Mo, it states that it's very important that the board and the city council provide the best services they can to the community and encourage organizing a meeting to discuss the best path forward in moving forward. I think that we should get together with the city council in the very near future without attorneys and just kind of do a little bit of planning and see where we're at, see what we can agree on and come to consensus with the two boards. And so that's,
Maybe talk about that under director's reports, because right now we're just doing any changes to the minutes.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Is there any comment from the public on approval of board meeting minutes? No, I think I heard a motion from Director Whiff. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Consent calendar. Do any board members wish to pull an item from the consent calendar? We have check register, county expenses, and reports from city.
I just want to make one comment here. What Jeff was talking about, the June monthly expenses. So our total monthly expenses, and we go through website, policy, dues for Golden State, that's insurance, office and rent, and bookkeeping, professional services from Mark, he's another financial guy, and then Cliff Larson. And of the almost $48,000, 54% of that are legal fees of our operating expenses. And this is constantly every month, and I bring
So
it up.
I see legal fees at Duncan and O'Brien.
Yeah, that's $25,000 total, and it's 54% of our monthly operating expenses. So I want to bring that up again, that the legal fees are way too high. We have to find a way to.
Well, hopefully we'll settle the budget dispute, and that will get rid of a lot of those.
Yeah,
I mean, that's,
I just,
It's-
because you mentioned that
it's
the biggest expense, if we go back to normal legal expenses, will save a whole hell of a lot more money than billing and collections. That's a tenth of the legal fees if we do our own billing and collections. And so we're putting a lot of effort into that where we can reduce our costs quickly.
How do you suggest doing that, Julie, when the city's
By
not playing
getting
ball?
to get together with them and talk and get the two boards together, we got to start somewhere.
The boards aren't gonna do it.
you have
That's your opinion.
you have a mayor and 5 or 6 city staff at every meeting, and you see what happens.
We've never gotten together.
Why would it be
We've
any
never
different?
We've never, let's give
Our-
it a try.
Our staff and their
Let's give it a
staff,
try.
our staff and their staff got together to work out the budget before arbitration. And we extended the deadline to August to try to do that, to not force arbitration. So our staff, with their attorney and with our attorney, are trying to work it out so that we don't go to
I
arbitration.
think we should do a strategic, we need to get together and look at what's going on to better serve the people of the valley. We are spending too much on lawyers, and we need to somehow change that. You know, if you're gonna save, $50,000 on collection and billing, it makes no sense when you're just, it makes absolutely no sense.
I hate spending that much money on attorneys too. I think it's a waste, but what's the flip side? If we don't do that, what do?
We need to get together and make a strategic plan on how to go forward with both boards and get rid of all this. We need to try something different. We need to just try.
Maybe we ought to just go by the operating agreement that we spent years getting it written. You know, if everybody played by the operating agreement, those
Two
illegal.
lawyers wrote that operating agreement and it doesn't seem to be working. Nobody.
Because the city's not playing ball. The city doesn't play ball, the lawyers are still here, you know? I view it completely different than you do.
You do,
So,
I know you do.
that is regarding expenses.
Okay, so that's what I want.
Okay.
I want to get on the record.
Anything else regarding the expenses?
Motion?
Yeah, I was just checking the connection fees on the city report, and it's 0.
Zero.
So I move to approve the monthly expenses.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Sure, I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Did I open that up to public comment? Is there anyone from the public who does wish to comment on the consent calendar? We can do that now. And announcements and other business matters. And I will first call on our district manager.
Thank you. A few items, and this is primarily just for informing you guys what we're doing, so if you have any questions, please ask, otherwise I'm going to go through these really quick. The grand jury report, at our last meeting, board authorized staff to prepare a draft response to the grand jury. We have 90 days. It's my intent to have this draft to you by our next board meeting for your review and any changes you guys want to make, but it'll be a starting point, hopefully, for discussion amongst the board. And we've started on it, and it's quite a process. You guys have seen the report. There's a lot of questions in there and comments, and the good thing is it gives us an opportunity to respond. And we want to do it in a thorough way. We feel that it's an opportunity for us. It's somewhat of a disappointment for me because the district had responded to a grand jury request a couple months ago, and there was a substantial amount of documentation information that we had provided. It doesn't appear that there was any of that information was included in the grand jury report for whatever reason. So, we go through this effort again. What it's accomplished, we're fulfilling our duty to respond to the grand jury. And I hope it's time well spent and informative to both the grand jury and to the general public. So that's the position staff's taking. Any questions or, I know Julie, you weren't here, and so I want to be sure that everybody sure that this is a draft. Grand jury's not getting a copy until the entire board has a chance to meet, and if we need to meet multiple occasions, then I hope we can do that. And I want to get it to you as soon as possible, and I'll be talking to our board chairperson to see maybe have a special meeting before our next regular meeting, so you guys can look at it and maybe make a decision at your next regular meeting. So I don't know how you guys feel about special meetings or not, but if we give you enough notice, it might take more than one meeting to come to agreements on how we're going to respond. And I want to give you guys enough time.
You said 90 days. When's that?
That would be
I think mid-September,
September. Okay.
end of September?
Mid.
Mid-September, mid-September. So I think we're thinking if we get it out by Labor Day, would be good.
September 9th, 19th, September 19th.
Okay.
Then this week, we have sent out a letter to the city of Ukiah making a formal request to take over the evaluation, assessment, and calculations of the district's ESSUs. I hope that as our meeting with, my meeting with Sean on the 16th, that we can discuss that. The intent here is to streamline the process, hopefully eliminate any confusion or between the two agencies. We would be doing the ESSUs for our customers, our district customers, and I think it's important that the district is involved with that as long as you have staff that's capable of doing that, and I believe you do. And this information that we generate will be shared with the city of Ukiah for their review and comments, just like it's set up now with the city is according to our operating agreement, is to report and respond and give that information to the district as far as how they've calculated the ESSUs for the district. But my recommendation is if we can do it, and since they are our customers and we're assuming the responsibility as a district to take on that responsibility. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just curious when that was discussed to send that letter out. Must have missed that meeting.
Yeah,
It's just a management, it's just a management role. It's not going to affect any costs on this district. What has happened in the past is that the city has charged customers for an ESSU connection, not notified the district, and then that customer comes to the district and asks for a will serve letter because the city tells them you have to get the will serve letter from the district. And we know nothing about the connection. And so that's creating chaos. We're not able to get that will serve letter out efficiently and quickly to our customers. And if we can take a little bit of the burden off the city and we have the staff to do that, it's just logical. I mean, that's our job. We're a sanitation district and we should be doing that for our customers.
Andrea, I believe your former general manager, Rick Kennedy, used to do that. And I think what happened is that got to the point where you didn't have a manager that was capable of doing that, so the city started assuming that responsibility. So it's my intent to just go back to what the district had done at one point.
I was just curious if I had missed something. I saw the letter going out a month ago.
Oh, and actually I was gonna talk about that under letters received or sent. It didn't go out a month ago. That was a draft that was written that never went out. So that needs to be officially pulled from this agenda packet. And that, so that's a draft. So the actual letter that went out this week will be in your next agenda packet.
So I just wondered if you could, not immediately, but once you get into calculating it, if you could put together just a little how you do it so that if you leave or something, it can be continuous, it can be formalized the way you do it, the methodology and everything, and that way the city can go over it and look at it and see if, and are you going to do it the same as the city, or is it?
That's what Sean and I are going to be talking about. And
Okay.
I hope that this is received as a positive thing from the city. It lessens their responsibilities of dealing with the district and issues that arises if we do our own. The city will certainly have an opportunity to respond if they have any questions, but they don't have the direct responsibility of taking care of the districts in that way. So.
Yeah, so I would just like that when you get it set, that you write it down, your methodology, so that if you leave, it's not lost, institutional knowledge is not lost.
I believe our contract requires us to do it the same way with the city. That's part of our new operating contract with the city, so it's not a question. Really.
Sure, and to answer your question, yeah, every time we do this, there'll be a report made and filed with the district on how those calculations and any comments that the city has or changes, those will all be documented in there. And, my intent is that it will be agreed upon by both agencies.
I think Sean.
Ernie?
Well, at present, the district has what, ordinance 35 that actually explains how the calculation should be done, which is not in concurrence with the city's methodology, which months ago I did 4 different buildings that I had worked on that I hope demonstrated that the district's methodology was allocating more capacity to those projects than were actually being utilized. And I've been informed by the legal team that in order to really change that methodology, we need to abolish Ordinance 35 or change Ordinance 35 to reflect the same methodology that the city uses.
Perhaps we should
So
put that on the agenda.
after he has a meeting with the city, and he'll have a recommendation for this board, we will consider that, and I know we all want to, we all want to do it the same way. None of us want to lose money, right? And there's a formal process for abolishing an ordinance and setting a new one. So we'll follow that official process, and we will get on the same page with the city. We will have the same methodology. We might have different fees because we have different debt ratios for the expansion of the plant, but I think it's the goal of both the city and the district to have the same methodology moving forward.
And as you guys know, what really triggered this for me was that you instructed staff to look into the Rose Industrial Park,
Right.
which was some form of complications between the city methodology and how they calculated in the district. So that's really the intent to meet with Sean, is to go over what the city's calculated, because we are concerned, as I understand, that it may have been overcharged, not by any fault of the city, but because they may have used the wrong.
They use the district's ordinance,
an old
is what,
ordinance or something.
they use the district's ordinance, but there was also an amendment to that ordinance that hadn't been added into the ordinance officially. It was that Teresa found, that would have adjusted the Rose Business Park dramatically. In fact, one of those examples I used was a Rose Business Park.
So I just want to be clear that the intent here is to prevent these kind of things from happening in the future. And if the city agrees with that, then that, that's what I want to have happen, that both agencies see this as a positive thing. If not, then, that's.
I will open this up to public comment. Would the public care for our director to finish his reports first, or would you like to come to the podium now?
Oh, mostly just like to speak to this item in particular. That's
Okay, can you please come up to the podium for your public comment? Thank you. Get you on camera.
very exciting. Mostly, I'd just like to echo what Ernie said, and I've said it a couple of times already. You guys really need to update your ordinance to be reflective of what you've asked us to do. So for the last few months, at your request, we have been calculating things at this using the city's method, so they've both been done the same. But as I went through the lawsuit process, there were a lot of things that were written in agreements to be done one way, that were sort of informally agreed to be done another way. And those sort of informal agreements 20 years down the road were never memorialized, and was a big part of some of, I think, what was a large misunderstanding under the lawsuit. So I would encourage you to sort of cross that T and dot that I and either abolish or amend Ordinance 35. And as far as Rose, that's exactly what Dave and I are getting together to do, see how it was calculated, how it would reflect with current practice, make any corrections that may need to be made, and move on. And also just make sure that the way we read the ordinance is the way Dave's going to read the ordinance. We're also sort of not just reading the same thing, but sharing the same understanding. So as we move forward, there should be no misunderstanding. That's it.
Great, thanks, Sean.
Rate study, real quick, you asked me to prepare a report on the rate study, what's been spent, and I want to write that to you real quickly. In the rate study, it's not actually a contract, it was a report, I guess, on from the firm that's Mark Hildebrand, and from what, I guess, the original, and he came up and did an evaluation, the cost was $77,550, but the actual contract, I believe, was around $80,000.
81,210.
And then we have an amendment, amendment number 1, not to exceed an additional $25,000. So up to date, there's been 3 invoices that we have agreed to share with the city of Ukiah. And then there also had been an additional $10,277.50 that has been paid. We did not receive a notice from the city on that. I don't think that's, really probably too big a deal, as long as they're going to give us a notice on that. But that's already been paid. We did get noticed on the other 3 invoices. So there's been a total bill, and we've agreed to share the cost with the city of Ukiah for a total of $38,310 to date.
But just so everyone knows, the only part that hit this last fiscal year, end of June, was that half of that 10,000. The other invoices have come to us in July, so they'll come out of the next fiscal year. So the majority of the burden of the rate study will be the fiscal year we're in now, not last fiscal year.
And then, real quick, the billing and collection, as we're working on that, probably as of now, the issue that is before us is the bond indebtedness issue that we have with the city of Ukiah, our participation with the city. We are preparing a report to the board to address what that's going to involve, so that's probably for our next board meeting. I'm hoping to have the folks that we work with regarding the bond indebtedness to be able to provide the board with a report on what the bond indebtedness, how that entails and impacts our ability to take over our own building and collections, which is kind of an interesting situation. But as they've explained it to me, I understand, and we're going to have to deal with that before we can move forward. So that's it. If there's any other questions or
No.
Okay, that
Thank
is
you.
my report.
So under director's reports, I'd like to have a budget workshop within the next week or so. Our budget should have been approved prior to July 1st, and we haven't done that. And so in order to, we should have our June invoices soon, so we can have our actuals for the last fiscal year. So I'd like to put a workshop together with our board, have Mark put together, Mark's been working on putting together a draft budget and actual numbers, and then have a workshop for the board to look those over and make some decisions and change it where we feel the changes need to be made, and then at our next meeting, approve the budget. So if everyone could open their calendars, and maybe we could get a time and date now to set that workshop, that would be great. Do Wednesdays work for everyone?
Yes.
Wednesday the 17th, next Wednesday?
Won't work for me.
No?
24th, 31st.
Any other day in the week, or just
29th.
Wednesdays?
No,
Well, we kind of,
Mondays. Do you know if it's, how soon you're gonna get the numbers?
we could, well, in some of the actuals we don't have, we can estimate, like, we know the rent's always $425 a month. We don't actually need the invoice for that. So it's not vital that we get all the end of June numbers in.
Monday the 22nd. That's the-
I'm open that day. Is everybody else open Monday?
I won't be in town.
You won't be here, okay. Let's pick another day then. The 24th,
Yeah.
Wednesday the 24th,
Yes.
I can do late,
like late as in,
sometime after 5:30.
Okay, so how about Wednesday, the 24th at 6 PM for a budget workshop? Okay,
And do I have to post that?
yes, it's just like a special meeting.
I'll get with Doug for that then.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a workshop. We won't be approving any budget at this, just so everyone knows. We'll do that at a regular meeting. But this just gets everybody a chance to look at it together as a team, go over our financials, make some changes, take it home, think about it before we bring it to a regular meeting. And you can always get with Mark or Dave if you have any questions about it after the workshop.
Is that
Okay.
6 p.m.?
Did that work for you, Dave? Okay. Okay, does any other director have a report at this time? Nope. The next letter sent and received, we pulled the one letter, but we will get a copy of the current one going out. And our next regular meeting is August 14th, 2019. Our budget workshop is July 24th. And we are now going into closed session at 7:14. Okay, we're reporting out of closed session at 8:12. The board has given direction to staff and to council as a result of closed session, and we are now adjourned. Thank you.